Okay, welcome back. Um, what do I want to get into today? I had a number of, well, as you probably already know, I had a number of topics I wanted to cover. The last two are all kind of very autobiographical, and I don't want to get into that too much today. I thought I might weigh in on this lockdown situation. Um, it could be worth giving a history on some of my research on the internet and conspiracy theory and stuff like that, but I'm going to leave that for another video as well, because again, it's kind of autobiographical and I'm not sure how much background you need. I'll give you a bit of a timeline for the last couple of months, in, just to kind of give you some reference for what's been going on with the lockdown. I'm busking, like I said, so we get to the middle of March and we were still doing some busking. I had to move locations in Lancashire because of the lockdown. Um, it's obviously, as you can imagine, it's affected me quite a lot because we we were probably not very cognizant of the virus scenario by about mid March, and I wasn't in place here for the proper guidelines that came in. I think they came in at the end of March. Um, it was kind of much more in the news as we were doing our busking in North Lancashire more. We just kept on doing what we were doing, but then when we had to move locations here, um, obviously it grew a lot more real to me, and I started doing research. And because I've been looking online a lot the last decade or so, all kinds of theories needed to be investigated. And I think I pretty much, I mean, going towards the end of May now, so it's been 2 months. So obviously, to orientate yourself, figure out what the major media was pushing and all the rest of it. Um, you kind of, I think I spent the first fortnight of being in this location kind of just researching what was going on, and I'm going to get into all kinds of topics. So, and keep an open mind because I'm not really pinned to anything at the end of the day. It was a good. I mean, you're on social media, lots of stories being thrown around, conspiracy and otherwise. Lots of people, as ever, going into panic mode at whatever the BBC is announcing and whatever the government is trying to say. Um, so I just did my own research, and I kind of posted a lot more on social media in the first 10 days, 2 weeks of the thing. Um, and I have no one opinion on it. But like I say, there was a good breakdown after about 2 weeks of this going on, which I thought was interesting. Neil Kramer's roamcast, I think it was. No, I think first of all, his website is neilkramer.com if you're interested. He did a short written announcement on his website, which I had a look at just to check his take on things, because I have about, I don't know, anywhere between 10 and 20 sources outside of the mainstream that I kind of dip into every now and again, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on how busy I am. Um, so after about 2 weeks of looking into different things, before I get to the Neil Kramer, what had I looked at before then? Obviously watching government updates and this kind of thing, checking out the government website on the guidelines. Um, all kinds of stuff. The kind of very fringy alternate research side was like, there is no virus, viruses don't exist. So there's a kind of school of thought that Louis Pasteur possibly put in place, or did put in place, I've not researched it enough, at the end of the 1900s. And the notion is that there aren't any viruses. Um, People get sick from tainted food and climatic conditions, and so it would seem, in our overview of medicine from the 20th century, rightly or wrongly, most of us, I would say almost 100% of us, believe that because we've bought the virus notion that if somebody's sick in your household, one of you has passed it on to the other. So I guess the idea in this way of thinking is that no, you've just partaken of the same tainted food or been subject to the same climate, and if your immune systems are similar, then those outside influences would have made you sick. I don't know. It's an idea. I just want to cover all grounds. So that was one. I definitely put up a few links on that. People weren't very happy about it. What else did I look at? David Icke was very big at the beginning. I made a couple of you. If people are following YouTube, you probably know what's happened. He gave an initial interview with Brian Rose on London Real, who's somebody I look at now and again. The first, I think it was the first interview, got passed on to a major news media station, or it was broadcast on the television anyway, apparently. I think I stopped watching TV in the late 90s, so I don't watch a lot of TV. I watch enough to figure out what is influencing other people, the majority possibly. That didn't go down well because Ike was saying there was no illness. And he was, if you probably accessed the material if you're interested in that kind of stuff. He was also talking about 5G, which connected up to another series of ideas, which actually Rudolf Steiner talked about, who's kind of a big influence on me. He was talking about technological advances, and that every time another leap forward in technology happens, you get people getting sick, because it's based on either the electric universe, possibly, or something like that, radiation in the atmosphere. And then Ike was not responding to that explicitly, but saying that it was an influence. And then you had the crazy thing, which is something that's totally foreign to, say, 2005 or even earlier, which is that people respond pretty quickly. I think there were 5G towers being burnt down within a week or two. Obviously, Ike wasn't promoting that, but that was a consequence. And so I didn't actually know much about the 5G angle to this, and so I went back and there were some Facebook groups that I looked at and joined just to check out this stuff, because I didn't know anything about 5G. I think I know quite a lot more now. So there's that angle. You can connect these different opinions up in different ways. So I haven't really come to any conclusions. I don't think 5G is good for you, particularly your health. I think that people that burn down towers, would I promote it. I would just, given that we've got email and we can contact local politicians, I would just spend a couple of hours relaying the information you're getting and talk to people in your local area and find out what their opinion about it is, and give your opinion, which mine, as I say, would be generally negative. Although there are some people, even within conspiracy or alternate research, possibly thinking that it's okay. Boris Johnson today or yesterday, very recently, has said that I initially thought it was different kind of news, like he was going to stop 5G, but he wasn't saying that. He was saying that he wasn't going to use the Chinese template for 5G or the Chinese infrastructure for 5G in Britain, which sounds positive. Although I think he obviously needs to come to some more specific conclusions about whether he should have 5G here at all, or at least open a debate on that topic. What else did we have? Then we get the David Wilcock angle, which is the good news, this kind of stuff. QAnon, which is not a phenomenon I was aware of, really. And all you guys, if you've done that research, then you probably know about that. It's probably at this point that I should go back to Neil Kramer, really. Neil Kramer did a breakdown on one of his roamcasts, which he talks about the good, the bad, and the ugly. The ugly being, the usual people buying what's going on in the major media. There's not much more to say about that unless you give it a specific context. People get scared. People get fearful for themselves and their family, and they take the most immediate information and don't check it out, do any secondary checks on it. They just go with the program, which has been the story of my life for the last 15 years, is watching people go with the program, whether it be in the north of England, British Isles, and all over the world. Although I would say that that percentage of people has probably shrunk over time. To what degree, I don't know. So that's that. The bad, I'm not sure if Kramer intended Ike in this category, but that would be perhaps the more fatalistic element of people who are researching in alternate areas on social media and YouTube and the rest. It's all the end, AI is going to take over. All of our liberties are going to be taken away. We're going to be in a prison. Mandatory vaccines, by the end of the year, and then you'll die, or you'll be totally shunned by your friends and family, and basically end up in a hospital or having to present documents everywhere you go, and quantum tattoos, and Bill Gates is going to basically kill you by proxy. Some of those things I can see as threats. I definitely don't think much of Bill Gates. In fact, I think the man should be in prison or investigated, because he's been a mainstay in that area over the last 10 years. Agenda 21 is real. But it's going a bit dark in that corner. It's going very dark. So you can panic in an alternate way. Not sure that's useful. I don't honestly think there will be any mandatory vaccines. I think it's right for people to protest them if they feel like it, either online or in public, whether it's social distancing or otherwise. I don't know how you would do it at the moment. I wouldn't stop anybody, I don't think. That's the bad, the truly bad, and it would include Elon Musk and his satellites and track and trace everywhere you go, which is not too dissimilar from what I hear is happening in Israel. At least they're tracing virus, people who have got the virus apparently. I don't buy the numbers at all. It's already coming out in Italy that if the thing exists to begin with, at maximum, the numbers are probably 10% of what's being reported and has been reported. So we've got the good. The good is left really. The bad is a kind of uber panicky section of some of the seemingly existent risks to me of all of this. Included in the bad might be something that's happened much more recently. I've become aware of it much more recently. There were the guidelines that came in through the government in the UK. They were put in on the 27th or somewhere around the end of March, and they've loosened a little, but not a hell of a lot. They have put into law something on the coronavirus. Now, what to my mind, and I'm not used to reading legal documents, but I did read a couple via the government website. So what they're doing is they're invoking the 1984 Prevention of Disease Act, and I went through some of the stipulations in that act, and they are worrying. If you're worried about freedom going forward in the next few years, and then they have created the Coronavirus Act 2020, I think, and both of these acts are concomitant to each other. You can actually look at them in relation to each other on the government website. I'll have a look at the link. I'll have a look at the link. I'll put the link underneath for that. What rights are they giving the police for that? If you are asked about your health in public by somebody who is on the police force, and you refuse information, or you are stalwartly saying some of the things I'm saying, which is that the disease doesn't possibly exist, or nobody's in danger, it's a hoax, this kind of angle, which is not something, regardless of what information is coming to me, it's not something that I would chat to a policeman about if I was asked. If they're worried about your health and you refuse a test, you can be put in forced quarantine by a police officer. I don't know if they can force test you. I think they can legally, according to this law. They can force test you. They don't, if they have a test. A lot of areas in England, I don't think they have a test, or they're not. There are tests available, but it's whether you want to submit yourself to a test or not. So that's that. They could probably force test you. I don't know of it happening to anybody around here. I think the quarantine law under that act can only hold you for 24 hours. So their remit is really just to make sure you self-quarantine if they are suspicious that you have any symptoms of the virus. So, I mean, just on an individual level, if I had any problem and somebody said, how's your health? I would obviously say I'm fine, because I personally don't think there's a risk. And if they asked me to self-quarantine, I probably would. I'd just say I'm going home, if that's what you require me to do. and it didn't get in my way. Obviously, if I was starving hungry and I had to do the shopping, fair enough, but I don't see that unless police take that law to the extreme and they decide that they're going to be much more stringent. The other thing is, if people resisted en masse even any form of questioning by the police on that level, what powers would they actually have? I mean, how much space are they willing to take up for people who possibly or probably don't have any symptoms? Are they going to enclose you in some hospital room for? They can only do it for a day. How many places are they going to be able to do it in? So it's possibly worrying in the long term. I don't think for the short term it's that much of a big deal. I do think that they needn't have put anything into law. They should have relied on humility of the public and the police and allowed discussions to occur between them if there was any suspicions one way or the other. The bad side of this is it kind of plays into the whole snitch culture which has been going on in England for years. I don't have any personal problems with anybody in my neighbourhood of that kind. I can see the problems that can occur, obviously, regardless of whether you look into conspiracy or otherwise. It's not a good thing. The more ludicrous element to this is the NHS being clapped as heroes every Thursday evening by people I'm now referring to as COVIDiots, who've just drank the Kool-Aid, as they say. The NHS is a pernicious organisation to a great degree, in my mind. I've had a lot of experience with the NHS. I don't have any problems personally with people I've spent time with. I have type 1 diabetes, so I'm supposed to. Initially, I checked it out, and I would be in one of the risk groups. But then, the further I looked into it, unless I had other complaints, I'm not at risk, or supposedly at risk, if I was going to take this whole hoax on board. What was I saying? Yeah. So to me, at least on the mass level, even if you were going to take this virus thing as existing, then it's not going to have an effect on most people. Only the elderly and the elderly with existing conditions. It is very, very stupid for the NHS to be prioritising COVID over other people who have other conditions. And I wouldn't want to be a worker in the NHS right now because I don't know what they are prioritising if this thing is of very little risk at all. It could be that people are dying in their own homes and being taken into hospital or being presented as dying as COVID patients, which is absolutely ludicrous, and obviously swelling the numbers, the so-called numbers, which are very dodgy. I watched an incredibly dodgy Sky News broadcast about 10 days ago looking at the numbers. I just can't fathom them, and I always have a little bit of hope there because it looks like from the comments through YouTube most people, conspiracy otherwise, can't fathom them either. A good example would be that they had 24 new cases of COVID in London and thousands in other areas of the country, and it looked much more like a social engineering exercise to say to the people of London, okay, you can get back to work now because there's no risk here, but we're not sure about the other people. what is this based on? We have evidence that Imperial College is providing the statistics, or at least the majority of them. All very dodgy, all very idiotic. Boris, what can I say? You know, those people, well, I might be one of them, who think there is a monogram, an Illuminati that are controlling things. I don't think they're controlling Boris, but he's so flip flop anyway that I don't think he knows what's going on half the time. I mean, I watched something the other day, and he he had a kind of a Freudian slip, and he said, in the context of vaccines, he said, "I hope very much that we can achieve the virus." And he's just, you know, he's a flake. Whether he's being controlled from above, it's absolutely possible. But, you know, if I was an evil genius and I wanted to control the population, I'd want somebody a little bit more firm in their mind than Boris. And the fact that he got the virus, I mean, what is all that about? It's just a joke. I mean, you got to take some of this with a pinch of salt, you know. And saying that the NHS saved his life. I mean, does he have any pre-existing conditions? Is his immune system a total wreck? It's all very strange. Anyway, that's kind of me dragging out these three categories. The good would be more like somebody like David Wilcock coming in and saying QAnon has figured it all out. Trump is doing the 4D chess, and sit back and enjoy the show, you know. So, and I'm pretty much repeating verbatim what Neil Kramer said, so there's no need to go on. Skeptical of that angle as well. I've been doing more research on this QAnon thing. It's interesting. Do I put all my eggs in one basket? No. I'm not sure there's much more to say. I've even been looking at the tarot, see what the tarot has to say about all this. The media talking about second waves, and we're going to be locked down forever. That was more of something that was going on a few weeks ago. The lockdown for next 18 months meme has kind of disappeared. It's possible that there will be, and if there is, it wouldn't bother me. A second wave wouldn't bother me. It would get rid of the so-called virus quicker. Nigel Farage was very against this herd immunity thing. Doesn't bother me particularly. It's not a threat, I don't think. It's all a bit of a strange swapping of memes and rumours and theories, and I don't mean to seem aloof, but I'm positive and negative on it. I don't know. I think for me personally, I want to get out busking again, so I depend on major retail in urban centres to do that. I'm being told Boris is now saying that's going to happen middle of June, which is possibly better than what I was expecting, because I thought there was going to be this grey area of people going back to work if they wanted to, and then another month before the rest of things happen. I'd like a haircut, that's what I'd say. And I would like the bars and restaurants to open. And I think, obviously, maybe I'm speaking personally, but I just don't see the thing as a threat, you know. I don't know whose opinions I'm treading on or swapping with, I don't know. Um, yeah, so they're supposed to be up and running by July. I'm not really too bothered about all of that kind of thing. If the government says they are, for the moment, I'll trust them. I think the virus, like I say, I don't trust them on the whole scope of the thing. I think it's a storm in a teacup. Um, there's another theory that it was an accident, genuinely, and that it's got that deep state, always use a crisis notion all over it. So that's another idea. Yeah, so you can go, it's really up to you. It's a spiritual thing. Do you want to have your life invaded by panic all the time, whether it be from YouTube videos or from the major media? Uh, or do you want to just survey and take stock, not because of any law or guideline, just because it might be useful? Um, I don't know. Does it? The only thing for somebody worried about freedom and for freedom of speech and for freedom of congregation and this kind of thing is you want to see this thing back. You don't want to see social distancing after June. Absolutely not. I mean, and I think if you do, there's going to be some big problems going through the summer and into the rest of the year. And if I see that the numbers are being concocted because of big protests or in response to people's efforts, then that is going to have a massive question mark over it. Yeah, so if this thing doesn't, if they promise one thing and flip flop on it, then after June particularly, I'm going to be watching them like a hawk, and I would recommend that people do protest. In fact, I haven't said that anyone shouldn't. In fact, I encouraged it to begin with. So that's where I'm at with the whole thing. I just wanted to flag up that law though, because some people have gotten quite worried about that, and perhaps people in the US or anybody watching elsewhere might not know that's what's going on. The other part of that law is they can actually, um, if they suspect you of having the virus, I think they can ask you at your doorstep, and if you're not promising to quarantine yourself, then they could take you to another location. Again, I'm not sure how that would work out. It might be worth checking the internet to see if there have been any examples. There definitely have been examples of the police over enforcing the guidelines, and there's been a lot of pushback from people in general, I think. Any more so than the US? I don't know. Don't know. Some commentators that I'm looking at in the US seem to think that the UK is more authoritarian on these guidelines. I don't know. I don't know. It tends to be a push and a pull. So if people push back and they are dismissive and sarcastic with it, then they might, and they're also in the presence of a policeman who happens to be in more of the idiotic kind, then that might be a problem. But really my focus is just looking further on down the line into July, and I want to see that law repealed. I want to feel that it is obviously a temporary measure, and I would definitely speak to councillors here to repeal the law after July, definitely. Possibly earlier, depending on what's going on. But there's no need to get overly concerned about it, and I think I've not seen any major problems here. I do think it's worrying when you're shown down to supermarkets and you can't socialise. But I think Boris should allow socialising in certain areas or in certain contexts. I think he's got they've got a rule now, which is you can see people, but it has to be in ones, and you have to be outside. So I think you could probably socialise more than that, and I wouldn't complain to anybody if I saw groups of people, especially out in the open. The one good thing about the north of England is there have been masks, but it's not a big thing. I'm looking at international news, and there's always talk of masks this and masks that. Like I say, I'm not decided on the no virus theory, but if there is, I don't think the masks will help you to in terms of prevention. I think if you're sick, maybe, but I also have contacts in Korea, and they love their masks. Italy and Korea, from my knowledge, they've loved and love their masks, but the Koreans always loved their masks whenever they get sick, or they'll trip over a paving stone and put a mask on. I mean, they just love masks. So I don't know, people tend to go toward whatever proclivity they already had. I'm not really going to talk about authoritarianism in the UK in this video more generally. I just want it to be focused on this particular question of the lockdown. I might go in, well, I definitely will talk about my opinions, more generally in another video. I can't think of what else to add, really. It's not affected me particularly, but I think it's just ridiculous for people who are elderly, who need a walk and need to be outside, and whatever the issues with the NHS, clapping people as heroes. I mean, en masse, come on. I mean, we have to understand, most people aren't going to get this. All members of the NHS are not heroes, because on a mass level, they're just telling people to go home and self-quarantine. I don't see how this constitutes an act of heroism. If you can think of contexts in which they are, fair enough. I think it's fucking ludicrous, to be honest. But this is the more cultish aspect of British culture. And people just let fear rule their thoughts. And we know where that leads. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Just sit between the good and the bad, and ridicule the ugly, which is people taking received knowledge and not analysing it and relaying it properly to other people. That seems about all I have to say. Okay, take care. I'll catch you in the next one.